10, at least 10. I have at least 10 favorite fruits and vegetables that I love to grow here in Central Florida. Welcome friends, here we are in Vlogmas. This is my gift from me to you as part of the Christmas season. Between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I'm giving you tons of bonus videos Monday through Friday. So I'll be trying to answer as many of these as I can during the holiday season. And that brings us to Joanne Jalan. She asked a bunch of questions, but this one, what are your favorite edible plants to grow? Great question. Great question. I had to start thinking about it because I grow a lot of different stuff. I think I'm growing 30 to at least 30 or 40 different crops. And they're all sorts of different things, from vegetables to tropical plants to even native edible plants. So I started to try to think through like, okay, well, first I tried to answer just like what was one favorite, like what would be the most favorite that I had of all of them. And I had challenges to cutting down my list. So I put down at least 10 of them, and maybe I'll think of other things as we chat about this. So I thought long and hard about it because I was like, of all the plants that I wrote down that I really like, why do I like them? And you know, from like they give me lots of stuff, or they save me lots of money, or I just like looking at them. And as I went around and around, I actually came back to one, and I think the reason I really like it is it's kind of the edible plant that started it for me. I've talked on this channel about my vegetable journey. We've talked about like growing bananas. We've talked about growing all sorts of crazy things. But we don't talk a ton about it, but it comes up from time to time in videos. But it is the plant that really was like the first edible thing that I ever grew in our garden. And it was accidental. And that was calamondin, AKA calamansi. And if you don't know calamondin calamansi, it is a citrus plant that comes out of the Philippines. So it's kind of like a cross between a lemon, a lime, and like a dash of tangerine. It's different, but like in a really good way. Yeah, if you ever try it, like just don't like know that it's gonna be citrusy, know it's gonna be kind of sour tart, but like it's one of those ones like you can grab it and just eat it, and you'll definitely be like, woo. But I've done things like made like a lemonade, but like I call it calamondin-ade out of it, which is really good. I've made marmalade, and I'm so proud of my marmalade because my boss, when I started to learn how to make marmalade, is from England, you know, the land of loving marmalade, you know, Paddington kind of loving marmalade. And her and I had talked about like Jaffa cakes, which have like marmalade in them. And I made marmalade and I gave it to her. And she took it home, and her and her husband tried it. Both British people, both like Manchester. They're from Manchester, England. And she came back and said that was the best marmalade she ever tasted. And that was my first time making marmalade. So it's not because I'm some grand phenomenal. I just think because it's got the citrus flavor like you would get with like an orange, but it's got some of the sourness. And then I threw in like just a dash of cayenne pepper just for this like nice little like warm note, and I love it. I've done things where I made like chocolate cake, and then instead of putting like a buttercream frosting, I put that marmalade in it. It's really good. And then also I squeeze it, and instead of buying lemon and lime juice, we just use calamondin juice. So it's very versatile, and the really cool thing about it is like if you're getting into gardening, like you don't have to know a lot about it, because citrus grows really well in Florida. That's why we're known for oranges. Oranges are not native to Florida, but a long time ago, 500 years ago, when they brought oranges to this country, they grew really well. And they get out in the wild, and they can grow really well in our sandy soil. And what's nice about the calamondins is, one, they kind of fruit faster than you would with like an orange or a lemon or a lime tree. The other thing is they can stay way more compact. So instead of having to like dedicate, you know, 8, 10, 12 feet and however high to this huge tree, you know, you can keep them really small. They actually stay pretty small. Mine's got to be 8, 9 years old now, and I'm guessing maybe it's 10. And it's very small. It's very small. So you can fit it in a really compact space. You can grow it in a pot. I was growing a couple in a pot for a couple years. They do better when they're in the ground from a fruiting perspective. So, and it wouldn't be me if I didn't say this, that it can act as the host plant to the giant swallowtail butterfly, the largest butterfly in the United States. That's the avatar of this channel. So you can get butterflies in your garden. Oh, and oh my gosh, the blossoms like are just like orange blossoms. They smell so good. And unlike your oranges, lemons, and limes, they can actually go through multiple like crops in a year. So you might get like a flush harvest. I've had it where I think I had it up to 6 times in a year or 4 times in a year. We've had multiple. Right now, because I'm better about harvesting, usually we get 2 flushes in a year. And that's it. They're really low maintenance. They're really easy to do. You can pick them up from like a Home Depot and Lowe's. They're there. You probably don't even realize it, but if you look in the fruit section, I often see calamondin trees. And I think a lot of people are sleeping on them. You really should consider getting them. So that is my favorite. But now that I gushed a lot about that, then let's get into some of these other ones that you may be wanting to add to your garden. So now my second plant, I'm not going to gush as long as I did about calamondins because I think you're more familiar with it. But you really should consider, if you live, especially Central and South Florida, bananas. It's America's favorite fruit, according to the United States Department of Agriculture. We eat more bananas than any other fruit. Fun fact, right? And you, unlike most of the country, can actually grow it in your yard. So the biggest thing, right place, right time of year, make sure it has lots of sun, lots of water, chop and drop all day long with that thing, and you can have hundreds of pounds of bananas, which might be overwhelming at times, but you can have lots of bananas, lots of banana bread. You can make banana French fries. We've done that. You can use them like plantains if you kind of more like a starch on the green end. Smoothies, of course. Banana ice cream, like all sorts of stuff. Like there's tons of stuff for bananas. People are sleeping on bananas. So I'm a big fan of bananas. You should grow bananas. I grow bananas. If you want to know more about bananas, I have a whole bunch of videos and I can link in the description down below about bananas. And then the other one, I kind of went back and forth if I was going to put this on my favorite list, but mulberries. I enjoy mulberries quite a bit. They can get a little bit, this is why they didn't make my favorite, because I love the flavor of them. I love that they feed birds because the top ones always go to the birds because I can't reach them anyways. But the other thing, and they taste great. Oh, I use them every day in smoothies. So good. But the thing is that harvesting, when it's time for harvest, it can be super, super time consuming. And what do I mean by like it's time consuming? It takes about a half hour per person per pound to harvest. So when you're harvesting like 20 something pounds, like it becomes a lot of hours. I think one year, what did we get up to almost 40 pounds? It's a lot of hours. I've worked on some stuff to try to make it more efficient by like shaking the tree and having nets to catch it. And that does help. There's pros and cons to it. I'm still refining and hopefully I'll do a video about it maybe this coming year as I kind of get it a little bit better than what I had. But they're just time consuming, but they're really good and they're easier. I feel like they were easier because like blueberries, you have to get the soil acidic enough, which the challenge with that is that blueberry soil is not the same type of soil all the rest of your edible plants want. So you kind of got this one plant that needs something really special. I've never done blackberries, though. I have friends who grew up in Florida and they talked about having blackberries around all the time. I was always worried about thorns, though some people have recommended some. I just don't know where I would put it. That's really the reason I haven't done blackberries at this point. But mulberries. Now I'm gonna take you over then to vegetables. So my favorite vegetables, so I was thinking about this, and I think it's the classics. It's the classics for these ones is Seminole pumpkins. My first year growing Seminole pumpkins was this year. We've gotten, I don't know, it's a lot. We've got a lot of pounds of Seminole pumpkins this year. They're pretty easy to get going. Once they get going, they can go the distance. They can go the distance. And what I like about them is they stay pretty well. I've had Seminole pumpkins in my house 6 months, and I'm now only finding a couple where we've had to go ahead and just puree them and deal with them. But at least 6 months. All my pumpkins pretty much went 6 months before I needed to start like dealing with them, which I like that because if you're gonna get a lot of pounds of food, you want to have time to deal with it. So having some months to be like, let me figure it out. So, and I'm getting an maybe I'm getting an electric pressure canner from Santa this year. And if I am, I'm really excited about that so that I can can some of the pumpkins too, so that, you know, I don't have to puree everything. And this one, just like Seminole pumpkins, I actually got these ideas years ago from David the Good, but Everglazed tomatoes, developed by the University of Florida. Bob, I still thank you for sending me those seeds. Tons and tons, like they're growing like little weeds over here. If you feel like you fail at tomatoes, grow Everglazed tomatoes. And if you can get just a few bigger tomatoes with them, we made an awesome salsa this year from it and I canned it. It was so good. We had 8 pints and it's a lot of little tomatoes. But it was more like what I grew up with, because there was more like Cuban restaurants in South Florida where I grew up with, where it's that looser salsa instead of kind of like what you get from like the Tostito brand, right, where it's a lot more chunky and thick. So I like having lots of these little Everglades tomatoes. It reminded me more of that. It was really yummy. So if you feel like you can't do a good job at tomatoes and you're struggling, Everglades tomatoes, absolutely, hands down, you're gonna end up with a ton of them. But similar to mulberry, sometimes they get a little annoying because you're just like, they're still like, because you kind of got to go out there like, it's not like, kind of see with the Northerners, right? Like where it's like, this weekend I'm going to harvest 20 pounds. It's kind of like constantly harvesting them. But they're really good. And they're definitely one of those ones that like you walk by and just, they're good. They're good. From the pepper side, you know, I think a lot of people talk about jalapenos and stuff like that. And yeah, they work well. But Cubanelles, go Cuba. Behind me. They've been going since spring. They're still making stuff. So I really like the Cubanelles. That was an add-on this year. Big fan of Cubanelles. But recommendation, and I love these, again, kind of similar to the Everglades tomatoes, where you kind of walk by and just, they're just like that right nice amount of like a little bit of bite, but not too much bite. And that's got to be ají peppers. So ají peppers come out of the Caribbean. My neighbor who's from Puerto Rico, she was the one who gave me seeds, but you can pick these up at like Hispanic markets and stuff. They're not that rare and you can find them online. They also go by like dulce ají or ají dulce. So they're a really thin-walled pepper. I wouldn't say this is like a great pepper for, well, I'm gonna say it's not great for cooking, but she uses them like for sauces and all sorts of stuff. So don't listen to me on that front. I just haven't made sauces from it, but I have thought about pickling them, but I always eat them all before we have enough to pickle. So, but they're great. I love ají peppers. So I think definitely, and they're perennial. So you can grow them multiple years. They're worth growing. So figuring out a space for ajíes, I'm a big fan. Now, it wouldn't be me unless I added this last section. So a couple ones that you may want to consider that are edible, and I feel like they're a really good investment for you. One is dotted horse mint, aka bees balm. Our native bees balm is edible, and I've done some experimenting this year, stripping some of the leaves off, drying them out, and we are using them as like an oregano substitute. And you can put them in a tea and whatever and all that kind of stuff. They're great for bees. The butterflies like them too. The pollinators in general just love them. And it's edible. And they definitely, it's like, it's like an oregano with like a mint tone to it. It's really nice. So dotted horse mint, spotted bees balm, the native type. That's definitely one, that's like a great herb one where put it on the edge of your vegetable garden. It's gonna bring in the bees, and you'll get all different sizes of bees. You'll get like your sweat type size bees. You're gonna get your bumblebees, right? And why that's important? Why is that important? You might not know. So most bees are specialists, and if you understand stuff about like tomatoes and squash plants and stuff like that, most pollination that's happening of your food crop is actually done by native bees, not honeybees. And they are way more efficient at it. So like getting bumblebees into your garden is really important, and carpenter bees, which are attracted to that bees balm, is really important because it will help increase your yields of pumpkin plants. And then similar with like your smaller bees, like your sweat bees, are gonna help with like your peppers and your tomato plants. So it's like, it's one of those plants where I'm like, it's a win-win-win-win-win. I ain't saying, I'm just saying. And another one kind of in that front that's like a native edible is sweet goldenrod. I know you can't grow it everywhere in the state, but if you are able to grow sweet goldenrod, it is edible. You can use it as an herb substitute, and it is super beneficial to have near your vegetable garden. So, and it's one that you could just like grab a leaf off, and it has like, you know, it's like one of those plants like medicinal qualities, stuff like that. And I forgot, I was trying to think, is there any other edible plants that I lost? So here's your bonus one. New one this year, Puerto Rican black bean. That was a great one for summer to fill in after I was done with the tomatoes. Lots and lots of bean production, And it's, you know, when you're trying to grow beans in Florida, sometimes it can be a little bit challenging. This one, oh my gosh, so many beans. So consider getting Puerto Rican black beans. I got those ones from Urban Harvest. Really good. Made a ton. I think, did I get a pound? I think I got at least a pound of beans from 2 plants. That's a lot. That's like a really good yield. That's some of my favorite edible plants for growing in Central Florida, but what are some of your favorites? Share in the comments below. And if you have a question that you want to see a video on, go ahead and let me know down in the comments. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.